The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavior loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. If you experienced loss in your life, you know how much these experiences truly can hurt. And if you don't understand why these experiences of loss can hurt so much, you might also wonder if you're the only one who experiences life so intensely. But the sense of loss or rupture is more than a simple breakup or divorce. Even in death, there is more to it than just mourning not having this person around anymore. There's much more in the structure of your own mind that causes you to suffer this much than anything with the external world. I had a relationship for 6.5 years, and when we broke up, it was one of the most intense pains I've ever experienced in my life. And it wasn't all sudden. It was a period over a year or so where it slowly started to build up. And the hardest part wasn't the physical absence of this person. It was the terrifying realization that the relationship I was mourning didn't actually exist. It was a confabulation of my mind. A confabulation is the hallucination of wrong memory. So what you end up doing is that you are inventing memories and inventing a type of relationship, a type of dynamic that pretty much is more gone than it ever was real. The illusion of a shared relationship is an extremely strong illusion. And doing a breakup, you might wonder if any of it was actually real. And that's because the shared reality of a relationship was never actually that shared. It is two separate, parallel modes of awareness that then the mind stitches together into a singular story, always biasing your own version. And when the person leaves, then the stitch rips. They take the half of their reality with them, and you wonder if any of it was actually ever real. You are now left holding a fabricated storyline and desperately try to convince yourself that your version of the storyline is the objective truth of what happened, or the version that matters the most. When a customer comes to me for an audit because they are existentially disoriented, there's almost always some massive loss involved. Often people don't realize how they are actively grieving still, something that has been long gone, because the grieving process never actually fully went through. What often is being grieved isn't the actual loss of the person or the relationship, but the identity that has been built through that relationship, and then this identity dying or being in the process of dying with it. But by refusing to let this identity die, what you're doing is that this identity is still stuck in the past. What actually broke wasn't the relationship, but the invisible architecture of your own mind. And there are 3 specific load-bearing illusions that this loss then exposes. The first type of illusion that shatters through any type of loss is the illusion of fairness. The mind runs a background track of a justice system, dictating how things should go. And loss breaks the sense of fairness, because it reveals that the entire fairness model was a hallucination from the start. Reality does not care about fairness. And when your partner leaves you, then suddenly both sides feel they have been treated unfairly. And it almost always has some key core of resentment that had been building for a long time. And this stuff is especially difficult to deal with in loss, because now you cannot use your other partner as a feedback loop to keep reasserting your own reality model, but you have to actually take the emptiness of your own reality model at face value. Then the second one is the sense of control or predictability. The ego doesn't just want control. The ego is the control mechanism. This means predictability is manufactured by the mind, and so the ego can keep running it. When loss hits you, you feel like you are disintegrating because the control narrative just collapsed. You realize you never were in control of the other person, or you were never in control of your own emotions. And now suddenly you see how big the entire valley of your own attachment actually was to this person that you were completely blind to while this person was still present. You didn't know that you cared that much, and secretly you wished you didn't actually care that much. And the third is identity scaffolding. You didn't just lose the person, but you're losing the highly specified version of yourself in relationship to that person. The version of you that was within the bounds of this relationship and thought itself to be independent wasn't actually real. There was a presence there that was completely detached or unconnected to this person, but you kind of had the illusion that both of your realities were kind of the same or mashed together. And in the sense, your identities were somewhat mashed together. But this is not real. Your real identity was always alone. There is no true foundation. Now, to avoid the insight to all of this ego structure, what the ego does, it manufactures synthetic experience. To avoid the structural death, the ego starts running loops in your head and replaying conversations of the past. And suddenly, in doing so, it rewrites endings and fantasizes about a sort of comeback. Discussions that have been long past suddenly come up, and you imagine being in this conversation with the person again, or you wish you could tell them something that you didn't tell them, or you imagine telling them something that you actually never told them. And in this way, your disconnect becomes extremely obvious, which was there all the time. But now, since there's not this feedback loop anymore, the only way your mind can kind of keep its identity together is by imagining that, stuff went in a way that it actually never went by. And often during breakups, there's this intense need to be right and to convince the other person. And here it basically tries to, reassert its own reality model. But since the person isn't there anymore, all you're left to do is seeing how empty and meaningless this attempt really is. So the ego is manufacturing a synthetic experience to keep itself alive, and it would literally rather suffer painfully, fabricating hallucinations all the time, than face the empty reality underneath. That all of what you're doing is about a past that has never actually happened how the ego now wants it to be. It sees itself as the center of its experience, when there was not actually a center. There were two experiences and some weird intersection that is very difficult to define. The pattern of people losing something and then finding their way into existential philosophy or spirituality is very consistent, because our identity patterns get meshed with other people. And when we lose this relationship, then there's like a crack in the wall of the ego architecture. So actual loss creates a breach of identity that makes the invisible walls of the mind visible. And even if you might feel weaker than you ever did in your entire life, now that this has been cracked open, now you actually have a huge opportunity where you can finally see what you're made out of. In this way, it becomes an immense well of rediscovery and power that you can find for your own life. And spiritually, you can make peace with the emptiness that you always were and always suddenly we're running away from. Oftentimes, we are trying to use other people to make ourselves happy, and then other people become a sort of source of happiness for ourselves. And underneath this, need for happiness, there's an unsatisfaction with life, and we are relying on the other person to relieve us from this unsatisfaction, so we don't have to do anything ourselves, but we can get this validation from this other person. And when this gets stripped away, you're forced to find dissatisfaction within yourself, within the emptiness of it all. From here, you can move through all of these experiences and then create an identity for the future, something you actually want to be, something you're proud of, and something that in 3 to 5 years in the future, you can think that this breakup or this loss was the best thing that has happened to you, to your own sense of power and independence and understanding of what it means to be alive. Loss, whether it is divorce, death, or a massive life transition, is the ultimate catalyst for psychological development. And if you're ready to stop feeding the fantasy and look at what you are, then my ego audit can be perfect for you. The precise information about how this works can be found in the PDF in the description. Your entire body is a geometrical pattern that became aware of itself and now wants to understand its own nature. Self-understanding cures all of ailments of human psychology because it reveals how much of the mind suffering is truly a hallucination and a sort of delusion. Freeing yourself from all of your delusion goes much further than simply getting over a relationship. It is the entire structure with which your view of reality is built. This video here shows what it means to be a self-aware pattern of suffering, wanting to be understood.